This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson. Hello, yes, this is your host, Harry Wilkinson. And welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. This is the show where we take a look at the days and weeks, events, happenings in the world of politics, happenings in the world of entertainment or technology or the environment, and anything else that touches our lives that we interact with. Anything else that involves the stories in the world today that we are creating and telling ourselves. And we take a look at it from a higher perspective. We take a look at what it is we're telling ourselves through these stories that we create. Now, sadly, we've had another tragedy happen this week. So that's something to talk about before we get to our main issue, which is focusing on politics in the transition era. The transition era, for those of you who haven't heard my show before, when I say the transition era, I'm talking about this era that we are in. That I am saying, based on some astrological information and transits that we've recently been through, that this is an era where we are emerging, where a new consciousness and a new way of life is emerging, and not just on, this has been said before about, people's consciousness being raised, but this is happening rapidly and taking, manifesting in very concrete physical ways, not just, good feelings and good thoughts and all of that, but very concrete things. And some of the aspects that herald or, represent this transition era are the rapidly changing views towards gay marriage, for instance, the emerging consciousness about police authority and abuse of that, so forth and so on. The increasing awareness of income disparity and the rapid changes that our technology is making in the way that we communicate with each other, in the way that we do business with each other. Our economy is being revamped from the inside out, and most economists, most business people, and certainly Wall Street seem completely unaware of it, to the degree where they're in a certain amount of denial and want to continue behaving and acting in the same ways that they always have been, to the detriment of themselves and many others. So that's what I mean when I say transition era, and these different aspects of our lives are taking on different meanings in this transition era. So that's been the focus of my shows recently. I plan to continue having that focus for a while. And we've talked about economy in the transition era. We'll get back to that in other episodes. We've talked about religion and spirituality in the transition era, and money. And now we're talking about politics. That's what this episode is going to be about. So we're going to focus on what's going on with that and the changing ideas we have about what politics means for us. But first, this tragedy that occurred. Every time something of this nature happens, I reiterate on this show that these are stories we are creating, and we create them in order to experience certain things that remind us or reconnect us to who and what we really are. And events of this magnitude, tragedies of this magnitude, are sort of a grand stage, if you will, to remind ourselves, reconnect with what we really and truly are. And of course, we experience it as tragic and sad. We think about people who've lost their lives. Now, if you're looking at it from a spiritual perspective, of course, we know that lives are never really lost. Your physical body may be lost, but if you are a spiritual person, you know that you are not your body. So you have that, but at times like these, when you're involved in the moment of a story like this, uh, that's kind of hard to access. But my contention has always been, and I've said this through the many losses that we've had of high uh, uh, people who are in the public arena, uh, everybody from Whitney Houston to Robin Williams and other tragic deaths that we've been through recently. Everybody who is a spiritual, who has a manifestation on this planet, every spiritual being that has a manifestation on this planet, also creates the way that they're going to leave that manifestation. And they do it in a way that represents who they are and also may have meaning for those around them. That's my spiritual perspective on it. So when you have a incident like this where many people are killed, I look at it, after rising above the sort of the immediate shock value of it, when I take it into spirit and look at it from that perspective, what I realize is that these people, these heroes, created that situation, created that way of leaving their physical manifestation to show us something, to bring us together, to connect us in our sorrow, to enlighten us as to the mistakes we are making, particularly in areas that involve weaponry and guns. The many people who have lost their lives, I say they're heroes because I say that and not that they planned this at the mundane level, but on a metaphysical level, their spirits created this situation for them to teach, for them to bring to our attention, to bring us together, to make us know that we are one with them, that we are part of them. So I look at tragedies like this as their way of making us aware of something, of giving us something to experience, to help us more connect with who and what we really are. So, and I know it's hard sometimes to look at it in that way, to look at it as if it were a film or a hologram in which we are interacting. And you should be involved in the reality of it, or you should be, completely absorbed, in it in order to get the most from it. So I'm sure that you probably heard quite a bit about what happened in Roseburg, Oregon, and how this tragedy, unfolded. So I won't, rehash all of that here. I mean, it's everywhere. You can turn on your 24-hour news network or your radio or your even the your online newspaper, and you will have ad nauseum all you need to know about the details of what happened and when it happened and who did what and all of those things. But I will just leave it, at the fact that these students and teachers are the heroes, are the ones who, on their level, on their spiritual level, created, or collectively, we all created this situation, and these people stepped up to participate in it. Let me just say it that way. Now, the other aspect of it, since we do talk about spirituality and we do talk about religion in this, the other aspect that should be mentioned is this shooter apparently had a thing about Christianity because he asked some of his victims, "Are you Christian?" And said something to the effect that if they said yes, then they said something to the effect that well, you're going to meet Jesus in just a minute. So it's very interesting that there was something about religion involved in this man's rampage. Just something to think about, and as we learn more about that, I'm sure that it may have some meaning or appropriateness for this show. But anyway, moving on now, because we want to talk about the main topic of this show, which is politics in the transition era. Now, I explained to you what I mean by the transition era, and we are seeing this transition happening in politics as well as everything else. So how is it playing out in politics? Well, if you've been paying attention, you may have noticed that things are getting weird. Right? I mean, things are getting weird. Even the pundits that normally think they have a hold on all of these things and can accurately predict these things have no idea what is going on. You have Donald Trump coming out of nowhere, and who was considered a joke candidate for quite some time, emerging as a frontrunner and a long-lasting frontrunner. And while he dips now and then in the polls, he continues to stay at the top of the list. In other words, this is a man who, as time goes on, increasingly looks like he could be a viable candidate for the presidency. I mean, if you judge viability on the popularity of and people's interest in him and willingness to vote for him, he could very well be the Republican candidate for president in 2016. And now you have major pundits who 2 weeks ago would have laughed at that statement, now saying, you know what? It's true. Now, on the other side, you've got Hillary Clinton, who, has been a favorite since, from the beginning. And she's still ahead, and much of this is, I think, reaction to the fact that She lost out last time to Barack Obama, and now people want her to have her turn as president of the United States. However, increasingly, Bernie Sanders is rising through the polls. And in many states, you know, they're literally neck and neck. I mean, Bernie may be down like 3 or 4 or 5 points, but in any kind of poll, there's always at least a 3, you know, point margin of error. I'm sorry, error. And that means that essentially Bernie Sanders has risen from being a, sort of a far left long shot to being a viable challenger to Hillary's run for president. So what is happening? What is happening? Well, and I think this has to do with what's happening with the our transition era ideals. Both of these characters that we've created, Mr. Sanders and Mr. Trump, are representative of a new way of thinking about politics. And that new way of thinking about politics is to not be political. You know, Bernie Sanders is talking about the things that we as people are most concerned about. He's talking about the income inequality. He's talking about Social Security, something that people are quite fond of. And he's talking about making sure that corporations are held accountable. The wealthiest in the country, in the world, pay their fair share, not just as much as others, but more, because more is given to them. These are the kinds of things that he's talking about. He is not ashamed of the term socialism. You know, and that in and of itself is a radical departure. The fact that people are, polling for him, knowing that, is a radical departure because, one of the first things that, Republicans used to kind of criticize President Obama's policies was to call them socialist policies. And that's supposed to be a dirty word. That's supposed to be something that people will just go, oh no. However, it seems like the public perception of what a socialist is, or what socialism is, isn't quite as negative as, conservatives would like to believe or would like to make happen. Thus, you have Bernie Sanders. Calls himself, I think, a democratic socialist. Because his policies are about, a society taking care of each other. That we take care of our own, that we look out for one another. And that part of government's job is to take care of those who cannot take care of themselves. I mean, that's been a long-standing mission of government, particularly our government. And efforts to make government smaller, more contained, often have to do with trying to gut that mission. Now, if you look at Donald Trump and the things that he's talking about, he's also talking about corporations being accountable and paying their fair share. Now, he just came out with a different sort of tax idea that is very similar to what Republicans have always put out there, and very much in line with sort of the kind of trickle-down approach to the economy that has dominated since the Reagan years. However, what's different is he's also talking about Wall Street companies being held accountable, and those corporations paying much more than they should be, or than they have been. His messages, are reactionary in many cases. Particularly his messages on the immigration situation, and in many instances, he's just simply reacting to groundswells of sentiment that are things that people want to hear expressed, and expressed in a way that is something that they can relate to. So, how is politics changing in this transition era? Well, I think the understanding that people are hopefully moving towards the way we're moving towards because of the restrictions in the political system, the amount of money that's involved. I think people are just saying, politics is not going to help us. Politics is not really going to work for us, at least not on the level that it's on now. It has to be grassroots, ground level, approaches to making the changes that you want to have made. And this is in positive and negative ways. The other undercurrent here that is, it's in the same energy, but it's the opposite undercurrent is the reactionary. It's the urge to eliminate that which is different, particularly among those who are, not minorities. Among the white people who are aware that or afraid of the idea that more ethnic mix, more and different ethnicities are rising, and actually that their numbers are dwindling. So there's a sort of reactionary knee-jerk pull away from that sort of change. While on the other side of it, there is growing awareness of our society and our connections to one another. So what I think the understanding is that's developing is that I think that we will understand that there are no political solutions. to our problems. And the fact that we are, throwing up the least likely figures, the people who are least connected to, the uh, political system as it is now, tells us that there's a need to dismantle it, and that's really what it's about. From either as if you look at Bernie Sanders or you look at Donald Trump, both of them in their own way are about dismantling completely the political apparatus that seems to have been, solidified and frozen, and that has become, monolithic to so many of us. So I think that's the realization that there are no political solutions. The political system isn't going to change things for us. We are going to change, and the political system will follow along. I think that's the kind of awareness that we're moving towards. But you're going to see a lot of crazy stuff happening in between. A lot of reactionary stuff, a lot of scary, even racist, and almost similar to kind of the energy that was going in Germany in the 30s during the Nazi era. In Europe, there's a huge backlash against immigrants in many countries, and there's been a rise in sort of neo-Nazi attitudes. So whenever you're in this transition era where things are breaking down and new things are developing, you're going to have that, dark side, that scary side coming up too. So to close this out, I want to talk about, because people have been asking about this and I wanted to get to it. I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but we had what's known as a blood moon in September. And blood moon is a rare occurrence. And just briefly, this blood moon, we've had 4 of them, and they coincide with the Uranus-Pluto square that I've been talking about. That's that square that we've been experiencing since 2012 or so. That has put us in this transition era of social upheaval. So now this article comes from Cassius Methel on the Spirit Science and Metaphysics website, but Cassius makes some good points here, saying that people all over the world are intuitively experiencing a distinct feeling of anticipation, shift, and awakening. And this is due to this Uranus-Pluto square that I've been talking about. Now, they have different dates on this. It really is. It's really been, we've had the aspect, and it's done. It stopped in March of 2015, but some astrologers are prolonging it till 2018, and I'm not sure where they're getting those figures, but for sure it's happened and it's caused an awakening. And this aspect, they're likening it to the years 1965 to 69 when there was a Uranus-Pluto conjunction. And consciousness changes during this kind of, energy. The difference is that in 1965 through 1969, Uranus and Pluto were conjunct. And conjunction is a positive aspect between 2 planets. That's when 2 planets are working together. This aspect, the Uranus-Pluto square, is not a pleasant aspect. They're not working together. They're working against each other. And Uranus being the planet of freedom and change and revolution, Pluto being the planet of power and destruction and dark energy. That's what's causing the political upheaval. That's also what's causing the feeling of making some progress and then taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back kind of thing. But this article is saying people are feeling the awakening and intuitively aware of the shift they have to find something to correlate this to. So they're talking about these blood moons coinciding with these squares. Um, so now there's some things that go a little far out with this article, but basically the blood moon is by definition a perfect full moon, a perfect opposition of the moon and the sun, with Earth in the middle, partially blocking the sun's light, making the moon appear red. And we've had a couple of eclipses this month too, in September. And eclipses always seem to signal shifts. So this is this awakening feeling that I think we're having, and there's some 5 things that we should be aware of. The North Node. Once every 500 years, the aspect happens at the exact same time. Okay. All right, this isn't... there's Saturn dominating the imprint. So Saturn makes a trine to the blood moon, and Saturn is a planet of discipline, energy, hard work, determination, seriousness, structures of society, governments, and organizations. Saturn will solidify, ground, and make concrete anything it touches in a positive aspect. And so Saturn's playing a perfect role here, solidifying this energy of transformation and the new era energy that I've been talking about. So there'll be more focus on, and more, as I said, concrete awareness of a new era. So, anyway, our consciousness, I think collective consciousness, may be heightened. That's what the upshot of this article is. And perhaps that is happening right now. I think there's much to be said about that. But in any case, our time together for this week is coming to an end. So I hope I've given you some things to think about and talk about during the upcoming week, and hopefully things to keep your spirit energized in a good way. See you next week.